Se armó Cocoa, explotando el beat. Inferior a quién, superior a quién. Soy negra y orgullosa de lo que fui, soy y seré. Y que mi piel lo que, y que mi pelo que. No me compares, clasifique, solamente quiero ser. Que yo valgo cuánto por tener que y tanto. Lo que soy, mi dignidad, no se adquiere en ningún banco. Y no somos muchos.
Bajo la consigna sin racismo, mejor democracia, hoy estamos acá para acompañar y celebrar un hecho histórico para nuestra academia, nuestra sociedad toda y nuestro país. El día de hoy una referente de la lucha antirracista, feminista y de la defensa de los derechos humanos está hoy presente con todas nosotras en este día. Será reconocida por nuestra universidad, por el aporte fundamental que significa el testimonio de lucha y resistencia que es su trayectoria.
La doctora Angela Davis nació en Birmingham, Alabama, el 26 de enero de 1944, momento en que la segregación racial se imponía con fuerza en el sur de los Estados Unidos. El lugar donde vivía era llamado Colina Dinamita, por el gran número de casas de familias afrodescendientes dinamitadas por el Ku Klux Klan. Su padre y su madre eran docentes de profesión y fueron activistas integrantes de la Asociación Nacional para el Progreso de las Personas de Color, hasta que dicha organización fuera prescripta en esa ciudad. A los 14 años se mudó a Nueva York, lugar de acceder a una beca para poder estudiar en el colegio Elizabeth Ewing. En 1962 obtuvo una beca para cursar estudios de francés en la Universidad de Brandeis en Waltham, Massachusetts, siendo una de las 3 únicas estudiantes afroamericanas de su generación. Luego de viajar por Francia y otros países de Europa, regresa a Estados Unidos e ingresa a la Universidad de California en San Diego.
En el año 1970, Angela Davis fue perseguida, privada de su libertad y enjuiciada en su país por su ideología política, por su vinculación con el Partido Comunista y el movimiento de las Panteras Negras. Acusada de asesinato, secuestro y conspiración, fue privada de su libertad durante meses, a la espera de un juicio justo. Bajo los cargos que se le imputaron, la justicia norteamericana pidió su pena de muerte. Luego una movilización a nivel mundial que exigía su libertad en el año 1972, fue absuelta de los cargos previamente mencionados. A sus 75 años es una de las referentes mundiales de la lucha feminista antirracista, LGTB y de los derechos humanos. Ha sido galardonada por varios premios y reconocimientos a nivel académico y político-social.
La visita de la compañera Angela Davis se desarrolla en el marco de 2 conmemoraciones de relevancia mundial, como lo son el 8 de marzo, Día Internacional de las Mujeres, y el 21 de marzo, Día Internacional de la Eliminación de la Discriminación Racial. La misma ha sido una iniciativa por el proyecto Horizonte de Libertades, llevado adelante colectivamente por misangas, mujeres afrodescendientes, colectivo Ovejas Negras, Mujeres en el Horno y Más Vidas.
Recibimos con un fuerte aplauso en este escenario a ella, nuestra querida compañera Angela Davis, y a las autoridades de la Universidad de la República, de la Facultad de Humanidades y la Facultad de Ciencias Sociales.
¡Se cuidan los racistas! ¡La lucha feminista va a ser toda antirracista!
¡Adelante, Ángela!
Angela Davis, colegas de la universidad y todos quienes nos acompañan en esta fiesta, en esta celebración y en esta alegría que encierra muchos años, muchas décadas de luchas que comenzaron y que continuaron.
Angela Davis es un ícono del movimiento de liberación negra, afroamericana, de la década de 1970, pero no agota allí su carácter y su importancia, sino que también su trabajo en torno a cuestiones de género, etnia, clase, y sistema carcelario han influido en el pensamiento crítico, en los movimientos sociales de varias generaciones. Ella misma, en una entrevista realizada en Democracy Now!, señalaba la importancia del diálogo entre las distintas generaciones. Los conceptos de libertad han ido variando, pero es importante que cada generación tome la posta.
Ángela nos recuerda la necesidad de actores colectivos para modificar la estructura de desigualdad. No es una lucha individual, es una lucha colectiva, ¿no? Para poder, una lucha colectiva donde la acción colectiva se transforma en recursos de poder para al menos mover mínimamente el poder económico estructural. También nos muestra que bajo otra modalidad los movimientos sociales posibilitan la incorporación en la agenda pública de nuevos temas y su tramitación, los relativos a las distintas versiones sobre género, así como las problemáticas de la generación y los temas étnico-raciales. También esta dimensión de lucha contra la desigualdad, el racismo, las expresiones de género, etc., no puede ser una lucha doméstica, debe ser una lucha que incorpore una dimensión global.
El Consejo Directivo Central resuelve otorgar el título de doctora Honoris Causa de la Universidad de la República a Angela Davis, considerando que hacerlo honra el mandato de defensa de los derechos humanos y la justicia que la ley orgánica dio a nuestra institución. Resolución unánime.
Vamos a invitar ahora, en el nombre de la Universidad de la República, la comunidad afro-uruguaya, la licenciada Noelia Ojeda y el magíster Jorge Chagas.
Queremos reconocer y agradecer tu vida, que representa la vida y la lucha de todas las mujeres afrodescendientes. Agradecemos y recibimos el mensaje que nos dejas como país para luchar a nivel ideológico, a nivel político y a nivel social. Y que estés tú aquí hoy y que estemos nosotros aquí hoy demuestra que sin racismo hay mejor democracia. Muchas gracias.
First of all, I would like to pay my respects to the indigenous people of Uruguay. And I express my deep gratitude to the rector, the vice rector, the faculty, the administration, and of course the students of this great university for having bestowed on me this great honor of Dr. Honoris Causa. It's so wonderful to see all of you this evening. I spoke yesterday about the kinship I feel to the people of Uruguay that emerges from the recognition that my life has been shaped by a struggle for justice, equality, and freedom led by people of African descent all over the Americas, from the deep south of the United States to the southern cone of South America. I also want to point out that a significant number of people following black culture in the US, in the United States, became aware of the struggles of Afro-Uruguayans many decades ago. As a result of the connections between your writers and poets and our writers and poets. Your poet, Pilar Barrio, evoked during the early decades of the 20th century a sense of connectedness linking him and Nicolas Guillen, the Cuban poet, and Langston Hughes. All three were passionately dedicated to ending racism in the Americas. I know that here in Uruguay, during the latter part of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th, you had the most active black press in the region, with at least 25 newspapers and magazines published by black journalists and intellectuals. And in this cultural context, I also want to mention Edgardo Ortuño and his role in Congress in establishing the Day of Candomblé. Accomplishments that led Afro-Uruguayans to be perceived as role models. But now I want to say how deeply honored I am to be present here at the Universidad de la República, your premier educational institution. Educational institutions have long been saturated with racism, but education has always played a central role in the struggle against racism. Therefore, this is the most appropriate site to conduct a conversation about the urgency of challenging racism. Slavery era in the United States, enslaved people were forbidden to learn how to read and write, and people who taught them were severely punished. At the time, it was said that the alphabet was abolitionist. If slaves learned how to read and write, they would be initiating the process of breaking their chains. Enslaved people themselves knew that liberation would require education, and vast numbers of slaves were willing to face severe punishment for learning how to read and write. Scholars of the era of slavery have discovered that women played a key role in spreading education through enslaved communities. We know of the existence of what were called midnight schools, where black women would convene children and adults after the slave owners have gone to sleep to teach them the alphabet and to help them learn how to read. The passion for education kept alive the passion for freedom. And the passion for freedom stirred the drive for education. Why do I speak about slavery when it was supposedly abolished so long ago? Slavery was supposedly abolished in the United States in 1865. Uruguay was ahead of the US, abolishing slavery in 1830. But the point I want to make is that the simple legal abolition of slavery did not eradicate the deep economic, social, political, and ideological impacts of slavery on the cultures of Europe and the Americas. educational systems throughout the Americas remain deeply influenced by the racism that has its roots in slavery. In the U.S., elementary and high schools in Black and Latinx communities are often referred to as prep schools for prison. They focus on discipline more than learning. How is a Black child supposed to learn in a school where they are surrounded by police officers, metal detectors, and teachers who are more concerned with disciplining them than helping them discover a passion for learning? In the United States, we call this the school-to-prison pipeline. This is a major expression of the institutionalization of racism. Schools, police, prisons, healthcare, jobs, housing, these are all institutions where we find the structures of racism. This structural racism is so deeply embedded that it is assumed that Black children are less intelligent than white children, that Black people are more likely to be arrested by the police, even when the police themselves are Black, that Black people are more likely to be found in prison, that Black people are less likely to receive adequate health care, that Black people belong in low-wage jobs, that Black people have always had and will always have bad housing. This is structural racism. And no matter how much a society is encouraged to change their views on Black people and people of color, as long as these structures remain intact, racism will continue to plague our societies. And racism does not exist in a vacuum. We cannot say end racism and expect all of the structures of oppression to fall. An intersectional approach to the struggle against racism means that we realize that racism has always been linked to capitalism, which has profited from and continues to profit from racism. Capitalism is racial capitalism. Also, it is not possible to challenge racism without taking issues of patriarchy, heterosexism, transphobia, and ableism into account. One cannot stand up for Black men and ignore the predicament of Black women, especially when all over the region it is Black women who have stood up oftentimes for everyone except themselves. Women are rising up for themselves and for the world. It is not possible to stand up for Black people without taking into account the diversity of Black communities. When we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all Black lives matter. Disabled Black lives, queer Black lives, poor Black lives. And in this way we make the point that when Black lives finally matter in the world, then all lives will matter. Since I am on a university campus, and the theme of my visit is the contemporary struggle against racism, I would be remiss if I did not mention the international academic and cultural boycott against Israel that is such an important dimension of our global struggles against racism. In fact, this is Israeli Apartheid Week, which is being observed on university campuses throughout the world. The academic and cultural boycott, which is associated with the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, seeks to use the non-violent method of boycott to turn the world's attention to the ways in which Netanyahu's deeply conservative government attempts to ward off criticism by defining legitimate and educated political criticism of the state of Israel as anti-Semitic. Is there any other government in the world that shields itself from criticism by using such strategies? The boycott strategy does not focus on individuals, but rather on institutions. There is a robust movement across the United States, and many academic professional associations have supported the boycott. This includes the American Studies Association, the National Women's Studies Association, the Asian American Studies Association, the Critical Ethnic Studies Association, the Chicano and Chicana Studies Association, and the Native American Studies Association, and many others. And in supporting this boycott, we simply say that we believe that the human rights of Palestinians deserve to be defended, that people should not be evicted from their homes, that Palestinian refugees should have the right to return, especially in light of the fact that any person in the world who is Jewish can make her or his home in Israel. When I visited the city of Hebron in the West Bank some years ago, I tell you, I was shocked to see official signs barring Palestinian pedestrians from particular streets. And the segregation there seemed to me to be even worse than the official racism I knew as a child growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. Armed with assault rifles, Israeli soldiers assigned to protect a few hundred Jewish settlers living illegally in the heart of the largest Palestinian city in the West Bank were ubiquitous. The wall, a multitude of military checkpoints, concrete blocks, razor wire, conveyed the impression of a prison. But this pales in comparison to Gaza, where 2 million Palestinians are under constant siege in what is known as the world's largest open-air prison. That 21st century Hebron recalls the mid-20th century segregated U.S. South is not the only link between occupied Palestine and the U.S. That state violence is contested by Black Lives Matter and other movements. Militarized, racist policing and the military and the prison industrial complex, This state violence is manifested in extreme forms in the occupied Palestinian territory. Israeli police not only inflict repression on Palestinians, they continue to train many U.S. police departments, and the U.S. in turn has offered Israel $38 billion in military assistance over the next decade. If we are willing to stand up against the Trump administration, we should also be willing to stand up against its closest allies. And thus we say no to Bolsonaro in Brazil. We say no to Netanyahu in Israel. And we say no intervention in Venezuela. Brazil, I would like to pay tribute to one of the region's staunchest fighters against racism, one who was assassinated because of her stance. I am referring, of course, to Marielle Franco. Approach helped her to develop strategic critiques of police violence. When I say feminist approach, I not only refer to her emphasis on gender, including non-binary expressions and sexuality, always, of course, including LGBTQ issues. I am referring to the way she articulated race and gender, and to her politics of articulation, which made it absolutely clear how the defense of Black women is linked to the struggle against police violence. Women are, of course, also the direct targets of that violence, but they also disproportionately suffer the collateral consequences. When Marielle said that her work emphasized race, gender, and city, she was articulating the conditions of poverty, marginalization, violence, and repression with the structural and institutional impact of race and gender. Turning finally to the political context here in Uruguay, I know that you will not capitulate to those who try to persuade you that the only way to assuage your fears is by militarizing the police here in Uruguay. You should know, given your experience of the dictatorship, that the militarization of the police will only produce more racism, more repression, more fear. And so I trust that you will go into this electoral period with your eyes wide open. And that you will always keep in mind that if you want a better democracy, you will have to work hard to minimize and eventually eradicate the dangerous presence of racism in your society. Thank you. Muchas
fríos corazones, hasta en las situaciones que hacen pensar el chiste, que también se la llevaron, que cuando va a aparecer, que quizás está sufriendo o que quizás ya murió, que también la secuestraron, que quizás alguien la violó. No puedo sentirme bien en paz porque aún sigo pensando que han pasado ya 10 años y yo la sigo esperando, y que hay otros como yo, otro familiar que espera, que no pierden la esperanza aunque a veces así lo quiera, aunque ella la perdió porque tiene sus razones, que su hija fue encontrada y llena de moretones.
Valencia.